I'm Shelley Behan, and welcome back to Beyond the Breathalyzer. We have been reviewing landmark Supreme Court decisions involving traffic stops and discussing what the police can and cannot do. We talked about the requirement for reasonable suspicion, the totality of the circumstances, and whether a 911 call can provide sufficient grounds for the police to pull someone over. But what happens after the police pull you over? Is there some sort of rule that says how long they can keep you there? You bet there is. That case is called Rodriguez versus U.S., and this is Fourth Amendment Friday. Just like last week's discussion in Navarrete, the Supreme Court was dealing with illegal or prolonged detention cases long before Rodriguez showed up on the scene in 2015. Ironically enough, while the prevailing law of the land regarding prolonged detention deals with traffic stops, it all began back in 1983 in an airport with DEA agents and a drug-sniffing dog. The case is called U.S. versus Place, where DEA agents seized luggage in an airport based on suspicion of drug trafficking, and they subjected it to a dog sniff without a warrant. There, the court held, as it continuously has, that a dog sniff in and of itself is not a search under the Fourth Amendment, but the court suppressed the evidence anyway because the detention took too long, just 90 minutes. So from this case, we get the idea that while the sniff is not a search, the detention has to be reasonable in length in order to be Fourth Amendment compliant. Same year, and we have Florida versus Royer, another DEA airport seizure, but no dog this time. Instead, the agents detained a passenger fitting a drug courier profile, and they removed him from all the public areas of the airport. No good, says the Supremes. Sometimes a detention is okay if it's brief, and it's based on reasonable suspicion, what is commonly called a Terry stop. But the detention here was more akin to an arrest without probable cause, and not a mere momentary delay. So from this case, we get the idea that there is also a limit on the scope of a detention. 2 years later, the Supremes again take up the timing of detention in U.S. versus Sharpe, where the police stop two vehicles they suspect are related to drug trafficking, and one suspect was detained for 20 minutes until backup arrived. The court there held that there was no rigid time limit for detention. The reasonableness of the detention depended on whether the police were diligently pursuing the investigation. 2 decades later, we're back to the dog sniff cases in Illinois versus Caballes, a 2005 case where, during a routine speeding ticket traffic stop, a dog is used by one officer while the other one is writing a ticket. The court said, "We don't care. No Fourth Amendment violation when the detention does not prolong the traffic stop." Again, we see here that the key limitation is the timing. So this discussion today is not about the use of dogs and whether that is or isn't a search and whether that should or should not be a search. There are 2 dog sniff cases mentioned here for the purpose of illustrating the backstory on illegal or prolonged detention. While the duration of the detention in place was deemed too long, the Supremes declined in Sharpe to create a bright line rule regarding a time limit for detention, electing instead to focus on the reasonableness of the officer's actions in pursuing the investigation. Similarly, in Royer, the scope of the detention, isolating the passenger and removing him from all public areas of the airport, far exceeded any reasonable suspicion the officers might have had to detain him. So from Place in 1983 to Caballes in 2005, we get the following rule. The police cannot extend the encounter with a citizen in duration or in scope, absent additional reasonable suspicion. And that wraps up part 1 of Rodriguez versus U.S. That framework will really help us next week as we take a deep dive into the facts of Rodriguez, what illegal detention means, and what your rights are during a prolonged traffic stop. Until then, stay free, stay fabulous, and remember your fundamentals. My name is Shelley Behan. I am the host of Beyond the Breathalyzer, and your rights are my priority.